Thanks, work. Please welcome Julie Ray.
Thank you. Okay, I need you all to imagine you're standing on the banks of a river. It's a beautiful day, the sun's shining, the river's moving a bit fast, and you're just having a wonderful time. And then all of a sudden you hear someone yell out, "Help, help!" And you see someone struggling in the water, and you wade in and you pull them back out. And just as you get them to the shore, more people are yelling out, "Help me, help me!" And you race out into the water and you drag them back in. You're giving CPR. You're doing lots of things. You keep pulling people off out of the water and onto the shore. It just keeps coming. More and more people are coming down the river. You go and get your friends and you ask them, "Come and help me. I've got to get these people out of the river." And you keep doing that. At what stage are you going to stop and say, why are they falling in the first place? Now, we call that prevention. And Stephen's talked about harm reduction. That's one of the pillars. We've had the police talk about supply reduction. And the other one of the National Drug Strategy is demand reduction. But I also like to call it primary prevention. How can we, as a community, prevent something from happening in the first place? Now, Rat Park is a classic and great example. But we do know why people take drugs. Stephen's already outlined that for us. No one takes a drug to feel worse, believe me. We all drink to make ourselves feel better. We might smoke to make ourselves feel better. We take pharmaceuticals to make ourselves feel better because that's what doctors tell us to do. Take this, it'll make you feel better. We know the harms, and Stephen's outlined that. 5,500 people die from alcohol injury and illness every year. 157,000 people are hospitalised because of alcohol. One of the leading causes of young people's death, 18 to 24, is misadventure accidents from alcohol. We have more people dying from pharmaceutical misuse than the road toll. We all love a drug, and we are all drug takers. I did see a majority of people stand up, Stephen, when you did ask those questions, and there are people who don't take a lot of drugs. But we all take drugs, and we are not necessarily all in a misuse environment of those. We also know the risk factors. Why do we get ourselves into misusing a substance of choice? So this young lad, I want you to all think back. You all grew up, and you're all saying to yourself, "I want to be a doctor, a lawyer, a farmer, you know, a librarian." What young person says, "I want to become addicted to a substance? That's my future." Now, I have to actually admit that I was giving a presentation in New South Wales where this woman did say, "Yes, I did." And I said she was the rare one, but her parents were users of drugs, and that was her environment, and she wanted to be just like them, and she wanted to grow up to be just like them. Oh, sorry. So we know that people get into trouble using drugs, and we also know that there are positive factors that can help us to ameliorate or not get into that situation, reduce the likelihood of misusing a drug. We also know the risk factors, and the risk factors are things like isolation, loneliness, self-worth, trauma, genetics, availability. The more risk factors you have, the higher the likelihood. Now, it's not a hard science, it's just the higher the likelihood that you will get into a misuse. We know that the earlier you start taking a drug, especially alcohol, the higher the likelihood that you will misuse that as you get older. Our brains are still forming until our mid-20s. The frontal cortex is the last to be developed, our decision-making area. The whole time that our brain's developing, it's pruning synapses. It's forging neural pathways and networks, and it's making them stronger the more you repeat something, the more you do something. So the earlier you take up a drug, the higher the likelihood that you will forge that neural pathway that says that's normal. So we need to reduce those risk factors in our community. Now, we also need to increase our positive factors. Staying in school is a positive protective factor. Getting employment, having friends, having healthy relationships with people, being part of something. Parents who provide structure and boundaries, set you guidelines, tell you on how you should and what you should do. And I have up there on the screen having spiritual beliefs. It's not just about religion, although church is a protective factor. It's about resilience. It's about understanding yourself as a person. And we as parents and as uncles and aunties and friends need to guide our young people and help them make smart choices and support them and give them direction and set behavioural expectations. Now, Margaret Mead said it takes a village. Don't underestimate the power of community. When it's a group of individuals get together, we can make a positive difference. Peninsula Voice, point in case. So I want to talk to you now about some of the things we can do in a community. I'm going to share with you things that are happening out there right now on what you can do. So, in New South Wales, we have a program that we are running with in partnership with the New South Wales Government called Community Drug Action Teams, where communities come together and they form drug action teams to do something around alcohol and other drugs in their community. Byron Bay is a classic example. I don't know if you've been to Byron Bay, but it gets every end of year. There's a squillion young students who land on their beaches for schoolies. During Easter they have the Blues Festival. They're not probably as young. They are a holiday destination. And one of the things that the community is fighting against is the alcohol industries targeting, like, come to Byron Bay, we're open 24 hours a day, you can get a drink anytime you like. So they're running things like Cringe the Binge program, trying to get young people to do alternative things during schoolies, so it's not about drinking games, that it's about alternatives and different ways of enjoying themselves. And they're being quite successful at it. Last Drinks at 12 is a group of people who are concerned about the innumerable amount of alcohol that's out there and trying to get pubs to close earlier. And we have seen from Newcastle in New South Wales, Sydney, and soon to be in Queensland, that the reduction in opening hours and serving of drinks after a certain period of time has a significant effect on alcohol violence. Local learning networks. These are things that are being funded by the Victorian Government. They work with young kids at risk who are about to drop out of school and help them find pathways into employment or into vet courses. I won't read everything that's up there, but what this child who felt very isolated and didn't have a lot of friends and didn't feel part of his community has been helped by local learning networks to become part of it. And he's joined his cricket team and he's now one of the leaders in that cricket team. But if he hadn't been, worked, if local learning networks hadn't worked with him, who knows what path he might have gone down. Good Sports, an Australian Drug Foundation, is a bit of an ad for us, but we've been working with it's 7,000 clubs now, over 7,000 sporting clubs across Australia who are looking at alcohol and how to modify the behaviour. It's been going for about 14 years, and 4 years ago we started a very complex research trial on it, where we wanted to measure what impact Good Sports was having on the community. So we can tell you that Good Sports reduces risky drinking by 37% and reduces harm from alcohol by 42%. Last year, or the year before, we were funded by the Victorian Government to develop a Good Sports illegal drug policy, and we are rolling that out across Victoria. And so we'll also be seeing how we can roll that out nationally as well. And that's about clubs looking at, well, what do they do if they find someone taking a drug in their club? What do they do if they know someone is selling a drug in their club? How do they support them? How do they get them to have help? Don't just kick them straight out of the club, because then you just further isolate them. You're just increasing those risk factors. How can we support them? But even though it may take a village, the power of one individual to change someone's life is really quite amazing. Our research tells us that a young person who has one person in their life who thinks they're absolutely awesome can make a huge difference to their outlook. So as aunties and uncles, and I think it also says now in parenting and things like that, 5 key friends. Your child should have 5 key safe adults on who they can also relate to. So it's very important that we consider that in terms of increasing our protective factors. But one that really touches me is Big Brother's Big Sister. They do a lot of work with kids at risk. And here's one individual, Jonathan, 12. He didn't want to grow up because he thought being a man was about getting into fights and being drunk. And he thought that that's what men thought was funny. And he wasn't really interested in growing up. But now he has a friend for life. And he's not scared anymore. And to me, that's powerful. The power of one. We can all make a difference individually, and we can all make a difference together if we understand what the risk factors are in our community, why we turn to a substance, why we want to misuse that substance, and how can we alleviate that. One of the things that we also started was a parents program. Parents used to say to me, I need to know about drugs. I need to know about these things. I need to know if my child's on them. And we have a thing called the Other Talk. And this is about you setting behavioural expectations from as young as 7 with your children about alcohol and other drugs. Now, it's age-appropriate expectations. But you need to start thinking about, well, when can they walk home from school by themselves? When can they catch public transport? When will I get them a mobile phone? When should I start talking to them about alcohol and other drugs? When am I going to set those expectations? And when they're 16 going off to a party, you're going to ask them, what are you going to say if someone offers you a beer or a tablet? And hopefully, because you've been doing all of this work, they'll have the answer that you've been looking for. But if not, workshop it with them, help them through. So your role and our role is to be great role models. To go back to our workplaces. What's our policies around alcohol and other drugs in our workplaces? What's my policy in my own house? What's my belief around alcohol? I had a mother send me an email the other day. She said, I've got a 5-year-old and a 2.5-year-old. We have a drink every night with dinner. Am I setting a bad example? Well, I would never say yes or no directly. I just talked about that as children as young as 4 can identify a bottle and name the brand. So they already know about alcohol. So I just gave her some tips and advice on maybe changing it up, waiting till they go to bed before she had a glass of wine, not always doing it all the time. Your children need to see you have fun without using a substance. Scare tactics don't work. Don't do drugs, drugs are bad. Okay, I'm not going to ever take them again. Scare tactics are for us. The people who are probably not going to use. Children will say, oh look, my friend takes ice, they don't look like that. That person's speaking a load of crap. Not interested. We need to identify who's at risk. And even though I've talked a lot about young people, older generations are equally just as risk. Polydrug use, people who are isolated, no longer employed, self-worth. So all ages, we all need to support each other. Form partnerships, join forces, work together. Be informed. Thank you.